In 1954, Mauch Chunk, Pennsylvania was renamed to Jim Thorpe. 31 years after that, I moved to Pennsylvania, and 35 years after that, I'm still visiting the town. It's quite a place. Its history and its memorial nature towards the athlete, it inspired me to try to make a short documentary to show you around the town, talk a little bit about the man, in hopes that for those of you that don't live close by like I do, if you ever find yourself in northeast Pennsylvania, you'll take the time to visit. I think you'll find it worth your while. It really is a beautiful town. So with that, let's take a look at the town, and then we'll talk a little bit about the man. Coming in from the south, Jim Thorpe begins to come into view, nestled between the mountains alongside the Lehigh River. I started coming to the town in the mid-1980s, and at first it struck me as a town a little out of place here in the United States. It had a European flair to it, in my opinion, and I later learned that the town is also nicknamed the Switzerland of USA. Its main drag is Broadway, and from the air, it almost looks as if the streets and the buildings are a flowing river at the base of the mountains. One of the more outstanding buildings that may draw your attention first is the 1869 Episcopal Parish of St. Mark and St. John. It was designed by Richard Upjohn, an architect most famous for his Gothic revival churches. Tours of the church are available, and trust me, it's something you don't want to miss. You'll also notice the Carbon County Courthouse, built in 1893. It was refurbished in 1993, but they left behind the original Victorian furnishings. You'll definitely want to stop by the Asa Packer Mansion, built in 1861 at the cost of $14,000. Its 3 stories and 18 rooms take up approximately 11,000 square feet of living space. What's so remarkable about the tour is that the last family member to live there simply locked the door and walked away, leaving everything inside as it was the day it was lived in. Right next door is the mansion that belonged to Asa's son Harry, which was built in 1874 as a wedding gift. It is a red brick dwelling in the Italianate style that today offers self-guided tours, murder mystery weekends, and wine tastings, just to mention a few. If you can stay the weekend, make it at the inn at Jim Thorpe, built in 1849 with its cast iron balcony and old world charm. It's a highly unique experience. Further on up Broadway is the Mauch Chunk Museum, a treasure chest of history. The Carbon County Jail, built in 1869, was a 72-room prison most famous for the hanging of Irish coal miners known as Molly Maguires. It was in use all the way until 1980 with its dungeon and gallows. Today, it is known as the Old Jail Museum, and it's open for tours. A walk down Race Street is a walk back in time, and you quickly can lose sense of time as you go from door to door of tiny shops and restaurants. The Jim Thorpe train station was built in 1888 by the Central Railroad of New Jersey. Its red brick construction in the Queen Anne style, along with its 3.5-story cylindrical corner tower, really catches the eye. Today it functions as a visitor center, and it can get quite busy with vendor stands and those looking for a passenger excursion out of the station. These are just several of the things to see and do in Jim Thorpe. There's much more to explore, and no matter how many times you come back, you always find something new. Let's talk about the athlete that this town is named after. About 1.5 miles away is Jim Thorpe's grave and memorial along Route 903. After the passing of Jim Thorpe in 1953, Mr. Thorpe's remains were to be placed in Shawnee, Oklahoma, in what would have become an athletic park. Funding troubles delayed the plan, and eventually his widow, Patricia, heard about Mauch Chunk, Pennsylvania, and how they were seeking to attract businesses to revive their economy. Eventually, a deal was negotiated where Mauch Chunk would construct a memorial for the late athlete, which would also be his resting place in exchange for renaming the town in his honor. In 2010, one of Jim Thorpe's sons, Jack Thorpe, sued the town for his father's remains, citing the Native American Graves Protection and Reparation Act. He wanted his father returned to Oklahoma, but Jack died before a conclusive ruling. Jim Thorpe's 2 other sons, William and Richard, took up the fight to ultimately lose when the U.S. Supreme Court refused to hear the case to overturn a decision in favor of the town by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit. And so it appears one of the world's greatest athletes will remain at rest here in a town he never visited. Each May, however, there is a celebration of the man's birthday with lots of festivities in town, and overall they have done well in keeping the memory of Jim Thorpe alive and well. They even are visited by one of his grandsons from time to time. So how good of an athlete was Jim Thorpe? Consider his performances at the 1912 Olympics. His time in the 100-meter dash wasn't equaled at the Olympics until 1948. His time in the 100-meter hurdles was quicker than Bob Mathias's time in the 1948 Olympics. His time in the 1,500-meter run as a decathlete wasn't broken until 1972. Even Brian Clay, the gold medalist in the 2008 decathlete event, would only beat Jim by 1 second. We can only imagine what he would be like today with modern diets and training facilities.